Hi, it's Peggy Otto again. This is for English 300. I'm going to talk a little bit about the rhetorical analysis and put it into perspective as to where we've been in the course and where we're going in the course. Give you a little bit more instruction about how to approach the collaborative annotation that we'll be doing on the new article this week in week 4. So I'd like to start out by, I'm going to share with you the course objectives just to kind of give you a sense of how what we're learning fits into the course as a whole. So these are the culinary learning objectives met by this course. You'll see that I've highlighted some words that you'll recognize that we've been working with. Conventions and academic audiences and genre, all are terms that you've been becoming familiar with as you read and write in academic English. Then in number 2, you'll find the things that you've been doing. You've been finding, locating articles. We're going to do more with analyzing and evaluating in our rhetorical analysis, and you've already worked with citing when you did your paraphrase and quotations assignment. Secondary sources, what you'll be doing, using mostly, and as some of you know, secondary sources are sources that use other sources. We get them secondhand as a reader, so the authors are writing about something else, as opposed to primary sources, which are original sources. A primary source might be a diary, somebody's diary, or a primary source might be a class, a set of class papers that you're analyzing for an education article. And I want to talk more about academic databases in just a minute. You've had some experience with that, but I want to walk you through that again. You'll notice in number 3, I've highlighted the word statements, assumptions, and conclusions. And that's what you're going to be looking for in this article that you're going to collaboratively annotate. What is the artist saying as a fact? And what is he asking? What is he assuming, or assuming that we assume? And what are the conclusions that he's drawn, and based on what assumptions, and are those assumptions valid? So we're going to do critical reading of these articles. So far, you've just done reading for comprehension. Let me understand what are the main points. You haven't done much of a critique. But for rhetorical analysis, you're critiquing in a sense. And then at the bottom, you'll see kinds of evidence, reliable sources, valid arguments. We'll be looking for those in your collaborative rhetorical analysis. So speaking of databases, I'm going to pull up on the screen the portal to WKU libraries. Just a minute. And show you something that I hope you've seen. I kind of directed it to you in the assignments, but I didn't point it out to you exactly how to get there. So when you open up the WKU library screen, you'll see at the bottom underneath this broad strip, the search strip, you'll see research guides. And when you pull that up, you'll see 53 subjects. And this gets quite specific about your major. Most of you can find your major here. And this is handy because it goes ahead and narrows down your number of articles already. So let's say that I am interested in journalism and broadcasting. That's my major. And so this opens up. It takes me to the home page for journalism and broadcasting, the library homepage. Here is the librarian that I can get help from. I can chat or I can not. And then I can also contact him in other ways. So then I open up one guide, and here it is. And it tells you just some things about locating articles in journalism and broadcasting. And then you'll see the core databases. A lot of these will use EBSCO, LexisNexis, This is specifically for newspapers. I'm going to go to Academic Search Complete, just kind of a general source that shows me that there's not really a more of a specialized one for that I'm going to be able to use. So let's say that in journalism, I want to pull up and search. So very useful. Okay, see how many of these I have? I mean, it's just giving me, there's a number up here that'll tell you, yeah, 2,898 sources. So I want to use the filters over here. I only want full text, ones that I can get full text online. And I only want scholarly and peer-reviewed journals. Let's make sure I've applied both of those, scholarly and peer-reviewed journals. This also allows me to select the publication date. If I only want to know what's published on fake news in the last 4 years, okay? Then every time I apply a new filter, it's going to narrow the list. Now I have 481 to look at. So I can use these to just scan through, and then if I decide I want to read it, use the full text. I just pull up the full text. And you can see lots of these. And if I want to get a sense of what each article is about, I can read the abstract. I can even pull up the full text and read the introduction. I hope this one's translated. We'll see. Nope, it isn't. Maybe we should use a filter for English. In English. Language, here it is. So use those filters. It saves you a lot of time. And then it'll take that one out when I filtered it for English. So, and this tells me over here what I have already limited it to. I have limited to full text, peer review, published date, and academic journals in the English language over here. So this gives you a lot of control over what comes up. So use those specialized databases. It'll save you time. So you don't have to go searching all through the general databases. Some of them, nursing, for example, has lots of those specialized databases. So remember that on the front page, when you first go into the library, computer slowing down on me, that you look under that white bar where it says research guides in small letters, research guides, and that's what we use. Okay, so I prepared just a short run through of some of the principles of rhetorical analysis. This is a condensing of what you read about in the online the textbook, the online textbook that I gave you on rhetorical stance, and that you're taking the quiz on today, if you haven't already. So I've prepared just a slide deck, just a very short slide deck to go over some of the high points of what it means to do rhetorical analysis. Now, first of all, we need to know that analysis is breaking it down. And again, this is different from what you did to create the summary. In creating the summary, you weren't putting it under a looking glass. You were just trying to get a sense of the meaning and put that into a summary form. This is what it says. This is what it does. Well, we're moving on now to the next stage. We're going to use a different thinking mode. We're going to use analysis, where we're going to look at this text in different ways from different perspectives and see if that helps us learn something new about it. So for evaluating sources, I use just some questions that help me think about it, and you'll find these questions in your reading for this week too. It's in the textbook with a lot more. These questions are broken down. You can find like about a dozen questions specifically about how to ask about the author. So go back to that when you're getting ready to do your collaborative analysis and look at some of those questions that they give you that you can ask specific questions about the author that then you can look for the answers to in your reading. So the who comes first. You should find out what you can about the author. This goes for this coming up assignment of rhetorical analysis, but even more so when you start collecting your sources for your final research paper. You want to make sure that you've got really credible articles. Now, if they're from a peer-reviewed journal, they probably are credible. But I'm going to allow you to use some articles that are not from peer-reviewed journals, and that's where you'll need to put this into play even more so. So just in everyday consuming the news, you always want to know the source. Find out what you can about the author. Do a search, do a web search. But in particular, you want to be concerned with what is their education, what is their expertise, what is their experience, and then what is their affiliation. This helps us, do they know what they're talking about through education, expertise, and experience? And do they have any affiliations that are going to cause them to slant the information? And if so, then we need to be alert to that. It may be that they're totally objective, even though they do have this affiliation, but it always, as a critical reader, we always keep that in mind. So after who comes what? What are they writing about? What is the topic? What are they writing? So this comes close to the summary part of it because you're trying to find out what's the main content. And so you can read the abstract, and then for a little more, you can go into the introduction. But the questions that you'll ask rhetorically will be, is this relevant? How is this relevant to when you're doing your own research? How is this relevant to my topic, right? And that'll help you to choose as you go through those databases and you find multiple topics. That'll help you choose the one that you can use. Then, who is the intended audience? Is this something that's written in a style and a language that may be difficult for me, but I can still understand it? Is it not so specialized and so technical that it's going to be hard for me to get through it? And if that's the case, then you want to look for another source. Timeliness, you know how we did on the filter, we applied a time frame. In some disciplines, that's much more important than in others. And the genre, what kind of writing am I looking at here? Is this just kind of an update on the what's going on in the field? Is it a report of an empirical study of some kind? Is it a what we call action research, where a teacher performs an experiment with her class and then reports how it turned out, what the results of that were? And in the different disciplines, you have different genres. There's meta-analysis. That's where you look at big picture. What's everybody writing about, for one? You do case studies in some disciplines. So you're already familiar with that idea. But that's going to guide the way that we read it, and also it should guide the way that we use it, because certain kinds of studies can prove some points but not others. So you want to just think about it from that direction. And then after the who's writing it and what are they writing about, then this gets into the why are they writing it. Are they wanting to inform us? They're giving us facts because there's a real exigence, a real need for people to know this. There's a benefit from this information. There's a benefit from this study. Or are they simply providing opinion to persuade us because they have an agenda? They have a personal buy-in, or the company that they work for has a personal buy-in. And that can be a little tricky to discern in peer-reviewed articles, but I think you can agree that different disciplines are naturally going to have a little bit of bias for their discipline, right? That's to be expected. There are also factions within disciplines. There are sides on a controversy. So if you're aware of a big controversy in the discipline, in nursing, then you can determine, once you get into the research a little bit, who's on which side of that current controversy. So determine whether they're taking sides, whether they're being totally objective, and usually a credible source will give you an insight into, they will give you an insight. They will use some transparency to say, this is the side I'm taking, right, if that's the case. It can still be useful. And then after the who's writing it, what are they writing about, why are they writing, we ask the how. How does this piece work then? And this is probably the core of your rhetorical analysis, to analyze how the author has decided to get to the conclusion. How he's at the starting point, he has a question that he wants to know, she has developed a certain method, and then they have drawn conclusions, so that there's a perfect roadmap along the way. So you want to assess the method that they've used. Does it seem to be reliable? Does this kind of experiment seem like an experiment that would give you those results? Does observing this class answer the question that you want to answer? So reliability and validity. And then generalizability. Is this such a small sample that it doesn't really tell us much about anything else but this one sample? So sample size gets to be important. Any author's conclusions needs to be tested for generalizability. Their evidence should show some reason to think that the conclusions would be generalizable. And then, have they cross-checked their facts, and can you cross-check their facts? So looking for evidence that shows that these authors have taken care to present the actual facts that they're relying on to build their argument. And then I say, so yeah, do I believe this or do I not believe this? I'm going to look at the logic and see. You've tried to take my thinking from square one to square six. And as I've gone on that journey, has the logic really stacked up to lead me there conclusively? So especially you can look for 3 different categories of failing in the logic. Those would be unproven assumptions, things that they just say as though they were true and they expect you'd believe that they're true. We expect all assumptions to be proven unless they are disciplinary. I mean, every discipline has its own sort of core assumptions, but other than those, then their other assumptions need to be proven. Then there's faulty causation. Proving cause and effect is risky. It's difficult to say that this happened now and this happened afterwards, and therefore this second thing is always going to happen after the first thing. It's not usually very reliable. So proving cause and effect needs a lot of math to go into it, and it needs a large sample. So just because someone says there is a cause-effect relationship between 2 events, we need to examine that logically a little more closely. And then unexamined alternatives. Is there another way to think about this other than there's group A and group B, and group A says this and they're wrong, so it must be B. If it's not A, it must be B. And so they're making sort of that argument. There are 2 sides, right? And no other possible alternatives. So you want to think about, was there another way that they could have thought about this? Was there another way that this could be done? So you want to check for those as you're reading, and make sure that the assumptions are all founded on evidence, and that the cause and effects are clear, the linkage is clear, and that there are no alternate solutions, no unexamined alternatives. at least know obvious ones. And then after the who, what, and the why, and the how, and the do I believe it, what else? I think you can use academic articles as information, as evidence, but you can also use them as tools for further research. There's a lot of information in the references list that you can use to look for other references. So often we just skip that, but it's really interesting to read the references list. Sometimes I read the references list first because I've been studying literacy for so long, I can recognize some names. But that's one thing you can do with the reference list. See if there's one person that has several different citations, and then you might want to go look that up. Use that author's name as another search. So use the author's names. Look and see if the author of this article and these are often done collaboratively. There's a team of writers. See if the author is a part of other teams, has been a part of other teams, and has published elsewhere in the same area. So you can look at the author's name. You can also look at the titles to give you an idea of the other sides of the topic, the other aspects of the topic that you might consider. You might even, as you're reading an article you scan through the titles in the references list, you might see a title that's like, oh, that sounds interesting. And you can either use it to narrow your topic, or you can expand your topic to include that, or you might even decide you're going to go with a different topic. So the reference list is useful by looking at the titles of the articles. You can get an idea of the range of the topic that you're dealing with. And you can locate relevant information it's almost like reading the headlines of a newspaper, right? So consider the titles of the articles as headlines. You might see what journals most of these articles were published in, and that would give you an idea of a journal that you might want to search. So instead of going into a specific database, you might want to just pull up a specific journal and do a search within that journal. So those are all points to keep in mind as you think about preparing to do a rhetorical analysis. You're going to be doing a collaborative rhetorical analysis over an article that I've chosen. It's about prosociality and organ donorship. It's an interesting read, but you're going to ask these rhetorical questions about that article and focus your annotations on those specific rhetorical questions. Then your article number 3 is going to be your next step. It's coming up. And then next week, you're going to write your own rhetorical analysis on an article of your choice. So that's where we are. And the rhetorical analysis is the last of our short, no, it isn't. It's the next to last of our short papers. The last short paper will be the research proposal that you'll be writing next. So you can see how we're working here. We started out with some skills, summarize what is a discipline and what's it mean to be peer reviewed, and what are conventions and genres. Then what are some skills that will need to be a researcher, summaries, paraphrases, and quotes. And then looking at how to annotate articles, and then looking at how to evaluate articles. And then we're looking how to critique an article. And then we come up with the research topic and prepare the proposal. Then after the proposal, and the second half of the semester is when we get down to actually doing some of the intensive searching and beginning to think about how to write up the paper. So that's where we are, and that's where we're going. And if you have any questions that come up about this assignment or any others, feel free to email me. Also, you can post your questions in the discussion forum. I look forward to seeing what you're going to send me.